again, my intention in this life is how do we bring healing to this world? It's such a beautiful planet. But how do we create a cataclysm of consciousness versus cataclysming a planet again?
So one of the things I've spent a lot of my career analyzing is DNA. And I found a binary code inside of DNA by looking at nature's counting system. So I basically said, okay, what's nature's counting system? And I determined that for the stable elements, it's going to be just the number of protons, which is equal to the number of electrons, equal to the number of neutrons.
Fibonacci sequences or a golden mean, very, very important to put into the technology, because I was told very intentionally, because we needed that to be able to activate and mobilize the body's stem cells. It was put in for the cellular replication patterns, because everything is that patterning in the body. Right? And we've seen anything and everything heal because that's what the body wants to do. It wants to function perfectly. This is just really giving it the energy, the information, the environment, so that everything can function more perfectly, more optimally.
Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, what a pleasure it is to have you here. It's so exciting for me to learn about your background and everything. Seems like we know a few of the same people as well. Having, I spent a lot of my career in the photonic space and electromagnetism and working in area of invention and patents, et cetera. And you've certainly had quite an illustrious career. You are a doctor of integrative medicine and biophysics, which is something I think is very, very interesting. We could talk about that, and probably biophotonics is another area of your expertise as well. You have developed this very interesting technology that I'll let you explain, that's in the background on both sides, flanking you on both sides there. And I think I actually have one of these as well in my office, which has been interesting. And I'm really excited to dive into what you've invented, what this technology is, how it works, and then get deep into the physics of it too. Don't be afraid of that, because if it gets to a point where it's very difficult to understand, I'll just kind of help with the translation for everybody else. But I'm super excited about this whole notion of scalar wave technology. And I think it's something that's probably, we're just scratching the surface on scalar waves and what they can do. And I think it's all part of a new approach to medicine and a whole new approach to pharmacologic and replacement of pharmacologic that will be with electromagnetism. So with that, welcome to our show, Think Tank.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Robert. It's been a long time coming. I think I'm surprised it's taken this long for us to finally connect in person.
Yeah, because we've definitely had common intersections, but just hadn't met in person. I definitely heard about your work and everything over many years now. And so just tell me a little bit about your background and how did you get into this?
How did I not get into it? I mean, I joke about it. People go, well, how did this start? Right. But I don't know if you've heard this story or not, but you can't.
No, I haven't. So
you can't make shift up.
you can't make shift up.
Yeah, this shift you just can't make up. It's too funny. My parents met in engineering physics at Ohio State University. My mother was the only one, like the only female in engineering physics. And we're talking early 50s, right? And she's the nuclear physicist and went through all the top secret clearances and everything. But so she's at Ohio State engineering physics. She didn't want to wear her glasses, right? So she thought my dad was her lab partner.
Okay.
And that's how they met. and he's the electrical, mechanical, structural engineer, photographic memory. I mean, yeah, both of them hyper genius off the chart, right? And so they get together, and she wanted to be this great research scientist, etc. She never wanted to have kids, never wanted to be a housewife, be a mother, any of that, right? She didn't cook, clean, forget it. She wasn't going to do any of that. So where did two super nerds go for their honeymoon?
I was going to say super nerd, but then I decided to refrain. because I thought, oh, maybe she won't take that well. And then you just said it. So
Two four-eyed,
you definitely said what I was thinking.
two four-eyed super nerds. Where do they go for a honeymoon? Of Niagara Falls, because Tesla's power plant, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's
absolutely.
Where they. Yeah, of course.
Of course. Where else would you go?
Yeah, but yeah, her mother told her if she douched on her wedding night, she wouldn't get pregnant.
So her mother was not a scientist then.
Two brilliant scientists. She doesn't want to get pregnant. Was told if she douched on her wedding night, she wouldn't get pregnant. And somehow that was all my fault. But I came in, conceived at Tesla's power plant. I came, from the time, then my mother was fissioning plutonium in the labs, Bell Labs.
So your mother worked at Bell Labs too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
wow. And Bell Labs is the place for those that don't.
Well, Bell Labs, but no, actually, she worked for Battelle Labs in Ohio.
Battelle Labs.
Battelle mm-hmm. Labs. So she was actually in the labs fissioning plutonium the whole time she was pregnant with me. And I remember it all vividly, of course. Yeah. I don't know what happened, And so, so growing up, everything was a science project. But from the time I could talk, literally as, 3 years old and stuff, from the time I could talk, I was talking about the mad Atlantean scientists and the abuse of power. And I was still pissed, right, at what they had done in Atlantis, because I had done everything to try to stop that and then to prepare people for the coming cataclysm. That's the most parallel life to this life, parallel time to what we're dealing with on the planet right now with all these brilliant idiots, right?
Yes.
I call it lessons in moronics and how to trash a beautiful planet. This planet is it's meant to be a paradise.
It is a paradise. Yeah.
Heaven on earth. And they've gone out of their way to create hell on earth instead of heaven on earth, with doing the same stuff that was going on in Atlantis. So by the time I'm 3, I'm like really talking about that because the memories are so. And so, you know how it is when you judge.
This is true. When you judge, you tend to get more of what you judged. Hi, I'm Robert Edward Grant. I invite you to explore my transformative books, Philomath and Polymath, each designed to expand your understanding of the world and ourselves. In Philomath, which means lover of learning, discover how mathematics weaves together physics, music, and prime number theory, revealing the universe's interconnected nature. It's more than a book, it's an enlightening voyage. Polymath builds on Philomath's insights, exploring the genius of thinkers like Pythagoras and Da Vinci, who used geometry to revolutionize science, art, and governance. Rediscover the polymathic roots that sparked past ages of enlightenment. Join me on this journey as well. Visit robertedwardgrant.com to get your copies today. Let's foster a new era of enlightenment and collaboration for a brighter future.
Like I said, mad Atlantean scientists, and I was still pissed. Guess what I got as parents?
That's pretty funny.
Scientists stuck on mad because my mother never wanted to have kids, etc. She couldn't continue with Battelle Labs. This is early 50s, right? And so mad scientists stuck on mad. And my dad, brilliant. So, but I grew up, I thought everybody's favorite toys were my favorite toys. It was Geiger counters and gyroscopes. Uh-huh. Especially, I had collections of them. And doing all of Tesla's experiments. So, and growing up, I'm, building transducers, receivers, all that, levitating things, building all kinds of circuit boards, circuitries, all that kind of stuff, antennas, rockets in the backyard, all that, and healing all the animals on the farm. Mm-hmm. So So, because I could hold my hands up and watch how the energy went through, because I could see everything as a combination of electrical, mechanical, structural engineering, and physics.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum, and really, it's all Tesla's work, so it's all quantum physics, really. So, but I see everything as that circuitry and that light force, life force energy in the body, and seeing the body as consciousness. And part of my gift, we all have our gifts, is like tracking things cell by cell through the body, but dealing with the body as consciousness. So as a child, how I played was, let's project our awareness into the animal and see what it's like to be in that body, to be in that experience, to look out through those eyes. What's that? What's that consciousness like? You could see through walls. I came in, past, present, future was all simultaneous to me. It's all, phenomena was what was normal, as far as remote viewing and all those things, because we have all those abilities. But I came in with memories of so many, my past.
And how did your parents react to all these memories and things that you, coming from a more traditional science background?
Yeah, traditional science background. I mean, they did some research on Atlantis and the antediluvian world and all that, and it was doing all that kind of stuff. But it was also, everything is on purpose in our life. And so I said, everything is on purpose. I mentioned to you previously how I'm in the bloodline of Martin Luther on my dad's side.
Yeah. Your family doesn't. You've had rebel in your entire history since the beginning. You didn't want to pay for forgiveness of sins, and probably why you told me earlier that your North Node's in Aquarius. That also spells rebel for sure.
Just a little. You can color in any box. I don't know, we were off any charts. So that's the way I grew up, though, doing all of those experiments, and then having that background. They were, it was, we founded the Lutheran Church, kind of the family did.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Also, the family farm was deeded by President Andrew Jackson. It's kind of interesting in Ohio. Oh. Yeah, so it's an interesting, very traditional German farm type thing. But I grew up with German farm medicine, though, too, with that. And so kind of understanding that, along with all the science. Because my dad, he joined the Air Force, of course, but his vision wasn't good enough to be a pilot. So he was put immediately into the aeronautical side, is aeronautical engineering. And so he worked on Mach 3, and this is early 50s. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I did all the experiments and stuff for all of that. And,
So he worked on Mach 3. So this would have been on like the SR-71 project?
Yeah. And it was only fairly recently declassified where he could send what he had worked on. That was before he passed. So very, very interesting. Can show you some of that information. So that's kind of what I grew up with all that. And then with the German piece, very determined. I was going to read that Bible cover to cover. So I did that, read it cover to cover 6 times by the time I was 12. But my mother belonged to Mensa, so I did all the Mensa brain training, which was very, very useful. And you could see some of that incorporated into this technology, really, to train the brain for photo reading. Because how I would play, one of my favorite ways of playing, one of the most useful things I got from Mensa, besides them being really, really big on logic, I thought that was totally boring. They would drill in the importance of logic and logical brain processing, right? Logic. And I thought, well, that's just too logical. That's boring.
Yeah.
Didn't really appreciate that till we hit these last few years where there was no logic to anything.
Yeah. Follow the science, right?
Follow the science, yeah. Anyway, so that was kind of interesting. But the brain entrainment was, you'd start with like one word on a screen, say a 50th of a second, and then it'd be 2 words, 3 words, 4 words into sentences, right? And you keep increasing the rate of the shutter speed. So that's part of what this does for the brain, is that entrainment for photo reading.
So can you explain what this is? So what is this device actually? Like,
yeah.
how do you describe it?
Well, we call it the energy enhancement system, the EESystem, and it is a true bioscalar technology. But my whole world was, my mom was working on the bomb. My dad worked on stealth bombers, and I came in going, how do we heal all of this? How do we create a cataclysm of consciousness?
So when you say your mom was working on the bomb, you mean she was working on the atomic bomb. So this would have been Oppenheimer project.
Fissioning.
Manhattan project.
Yeah, fissioning plutonium. It was all very, very top secret. She could only say she was a photographer or something. I don't know. But I remember it all vividly. And I came in with just the overriding intention for every one of my lives, actually. And my intention in this life is, how do we bring healing to this world? It's such a beautiful planet. But how do we create a cataclysm of consciousness versus cataclysming a planet again? And so it's spiritual science. You got that coming together of spirituality and science, a total merging, versus the separation that occurred back in Atlantis, where they went out of alignment with any kind of spiritual principle. They were doing the same stuff of hijacking the DNA and cloning and chimeras and all that stuff, and scalar, abuse of scalar and abuse of lasers, as you know. You probably have those memories.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for certain. I mean, and I think one of the things, I wrote a paper on the relationship between scalar waves and transverse waves, and how you cannot have a transverse wave without having at the same time a scalar wave that associates with it, that's just at a 90-degree offset. It's like another dimension of it.
Yeah,
and
explain
I was able to
longitudinal scalar or torsion fields. And it's really more field-like than wave-like, but
yeah. So that would be more like. So the way I came at it was from the perspective. I wrote a paper that that is published now on Cornell's site archive. But basically, what it showed was a novel approach to predicting geometric spirals. And instead of using the Euler number to predict the pitch of a galaxy mathematically, which always required additional adjustments, I found that all the galaxies were matching perfectly within polygons. So that each polygon can be broken down, any polygon, a pentagon or a hexagon or a heptagon or whatever. You could break it down into several right triangles from the center, and then it spirals out in the logarithmic form that's directly related. The logarithmic base value for that spiral would be the hypotenuse over the height of the right triangle that makes the center of that. And then you just take it to the first power, the second power, the third power along each of the modular configurations, and it makes a perfect spiral going out that matched every single galaxy. And so every galaxy was able to be described in its pitch using scalar wave. It means that the galaxies don't exist without the scalar field. Right. And that
it is the foundation. It is literally the foundation.
It's the foundation. And what I found was that it was exactly as we heard, Einstein posit, which is that, it wasn't that geometry described space-time. He said geometry was space-time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating, because then I saw that the relationship between scalar and transverse, which we think are totally separate, or let's say, longitudinal wave compressions versus
Mhm.
a transverse wave of light, if you ask most scientists today, they would all say that there's no relationship between the two. But I
There's,
know, in fact, that there is.
of course, there is. It should be obvious, right?
It's
But
completely obvious. And
this is
when
the
you when
stuff
you
I grew up with doing too. I was okay, so with the Mensa, etc., and I was reading encyclopedias cover to cover by third grade, all that. But all the math, all the physics, all the geometries. So I was top in the state of Ohio in Latin, English, and math. So it was very, very deep into, but you'll relate to this probably. My favorite days of school was in kindergarten. We made Mobius strips.
oh yeah,
Mobius strips. I was like, oh,
I
just like,
believe we're living one, and we call it time. But
yeah, no, everything is that caduceus Mobius. Yeah, that,
I
yeah,
think
it's an.
DNA is actually a Mobius strip.
And my other
That
most exciting day in school was, golden mean and Fibonacci and understanding all that. But all the geometries, I was very much into all the geometries and the
well,
precise geometries of the pyramids, for example.
then
That's
you'll like this then. So
yeah.
this is that paper that I was just talking about, and basically you could see here we analyzed like over 100 galaxies, and until then we could never see a perfect prediction of what a galaxy, why a galaxy would have a certain pitch
Mm-hmm.
of its spirality, and then once we finally figured this out, we could actually correctly predict every one. And so the scalar waves would be the geometric lines that you see that actually create the transverse waves of what we see in the way the universe forms itself with matter and the light that comes off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the scalar was fully integrated. These scalar compression longitudinal waves were
Right.
exactly 90-degree offset, as you would expect they would have to be, and from the actual curvature. And this was able to predict the exact spirality of all galaxies that were spiral galaxies, and also could tell us why a Nautilus shell, is actually a mod 16 based on an octagon. And and once this shell continues to grow, it'll perfectly fill exactly this line right here, all the way just as it does down here. And every astrophysicist had been trying to do this using the Euler number as a natural log, and then they would have to do manual adjustments. It didn't actually work.
Oh,
We even got to the point. Sorry, go
as
ahead.
the astrophysicist, did you know Dr. Krishnanand Verma?
No, but I'm definitely aware of where it worked for sure.
He's another dear friend of mine. He's a former head of NASA, but he was considered the top mathematician in the world. And so a lot of this goes into exactly what you were talking about, because that was some of his work.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I actually talked to another mutual friend of ours who passed away a few years ago, Elizabeth Rauscher.
Yeah.
Dr. Rauscher, who is also at NASA. I'm actually speaking at NASA in a few weeks.
Oh, cool.
I'm quite excited to be giving a talk there. But the thing is that I was able, even from this analysis, to predict the speed of hurricanes on the ground just by looking at the satellite imagery. Because what we could figure out is within 5 miles per hour, based on the modular arrangement configuration of the spirals. So this is a square spiral where you see this hurricane.
Right.
It's a square spiral, which then means it's a mod 8, right? So the number of mods becomes twice as many because you've got an inscribed square within the square.
Right.
And so from this, we knew that this particular type of mod 8 spiral would generate a speed of 105 miles an hour.
Mm.
And we didn't even need to measure it. And we were able to directly correlate the modularity. And so as it gets faster, the spiral polygonal relationship becomes more complex. So this becomes a mod 18, and it's, over 150 miles an hour.
Yeah. And of course, some of that was, I had a friend with NASA that sent me satellite pictures showing how they augmented that.
So scalar technology is not separate from light-based technology at all, but I think it's one of the areas that, even James Clerk Maxwell in 1860, when he did all of the famous so-called Maxwell equations,
right,
he talked about quaternion mathematics, that all of it was excluded from the final publication that was actually put forward by Oliver Heaviside, his colleague, who had a very heavy hand and took out the polarities of gravity from electromagnetism. And so then forevermore, we think it's totally separate, but it's really not. So that's why I'm quite excited about what you've been doing, because these are the scalar waves. They look like the scales on the back of a dragon, as the spiral of the transverse wave is right along the center of each of these triangles.
Yeah. So it all relates, and of course relates also to Walter Russell's work. Yeah.
Which I am a huge fan of, and I'm speaking at Walters University for homecoming this year again. I'm a big fan of Walter Russell's work, for sure. And you're right. It is exactly related to Walter's. In fact, I had lots of conversations with Elizabeth Rauscher about Walter Russell's work too.
Yeah.
For sure. So, but this was kind of the thing that we figured out. We were able to track every galaxy where, I mean, look at how perfect this pitch matching is on this mod 16 spiral with this galaxy. I believe that eventually, by extending this research further, we could even tell you the age of the galaxy. As well as the rotational speed based on the modularity of the spiral.
Okay. Way cool. Yeah. And were you part of at all with NASA on the research on the Nissan corridors and black hole corridors and stuff like that when they were doing that?
No, I wasn't. But I know people that were, and I know people that have analyzed a lot of it, some who are fans of it and some who are not.
Right. I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Because it's a very interesting history with our technology, with all of this, with all these top secret government scientists that I've worked with my whole life, actually, So,
it's funny you say this, because last time I spoke at Walter Russell's University was 2 years ago. And, they depend on donations and everything. And so I spoke there, and then, they were selling tickets and they sold out, right? They had a sellout crowd.
Great.
But the reason why they sold out is because the place was full of people from the Rand Institute, the Arlington Institute, who were all trying to analyze my work. It was really interesting. From the CIA, it was like, and I got the wildest questions in that room.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think so if it was just the Walter Russell group.
Yeah, exactly. No, they were really interested because it was around the time that I had figured out a new way to factor prime numbers mathematically based on right triangles, and extending the work of Fermat. And so the work of Fermat's Little theorem. And yeah, so they were really, really interested in that, because of course that has a big implication on cryptography. Okay. And that's basically the foundational basis of what we use for encryption today. But so, yeah, that was kind of wild for me when they all kind of told me, oh, I'm from the Arlington Institute, I'm from the CIA. I was like, okay. And they didn't have that far to drive, because, Walters University is in Virginia.
Yeah.
Swannanoa.
Yeah, so not far. Just like I was at MIT for a cold fusion colloquium and spoke at that.
Wow.
And they're looking at me, who's this blonde chick? Right? Because
so how does now that we had a little bit, now that we've had a little bit of background on what these kind of compression scalar waves are and the offset from transverse, how does this technology work and what does it do, this EESystem?
Yeah, well, my whole thing is just how do we bring healing to the world? And so back to my background, I started in 1971 with, really delving into chiropractic, reflexology, nutrition, Ayurveda. I see the body as a condensation of consciousness, and I see all the physics in the body. You can see, all the mathematical equations are in our bodies. But my whole gift is really, like I said, I'm a hands-on healer more than anything.
I bet do you know Menos Kafatos?
No, I don't know that one.
He's a physicist at Chapman University. He wrote a book with Deepak Chopra called You Are the Universe.
Okay, I do know the book.
Old friend of mine. And you probably know Stuart Hameroff. If you're going to all these consciousness types of conferences and physicists,
Yeah, don't know him either. I know.
he's big in the conscious community, and someone like Donald Hoffman, who I'm actually going with this weekend on a
Oh.
boat to Catalina, is going to be fun. But yeah, I mean, they're all into this whole idea of the condensation of consciousness. So that's why when you mentioned that, I was like, okay.
Because I've been talking about the condensation of consciousness. The body's a condensation of consciousness. I've been teaching holistic health for more than 45 years now. So I started with that background and all that, besides all my other background. So, and then of course in the early 70s, studying Rife and radionics, and studied Sanskrit. The best books on physics is actually the Vedas. Yes, I spent 8 years really delving deep, and studying Sanskrit and studying the Vedas.
For those that don't know the Rife thing that she referenced, the Royal Raymond Rife in around the early 20th century had figured out a way using what we believe was the 11th harmonic to be able to eradicate cancer. And they put it forward to the American Medical Association, who then summarily dismissed it as a technology.
Because it worked.
For lots of reasons that people think would be related to conspiracies and trying to suppress technology to keep people sick. Sometimes I think it's just pure ignorance. I'm not even sure that they wanted to suppress it. I think, by virtue of the fact that they just didn't understand it, they probably suppressed it. It wasn't always probably totally intentional, but that's the reference.
Mm-hmm.
So you worked on Rife technologies.
Yeah, Rife and radionics and photonics, and working with all that, and the whole health and nutrition, and a real strong background with chiropractic, in that the power that made the body heals the body. Just that basic underlying principle, power that made the body heals the body, but really studying all that, did all the, took all those courses and everything too. So, but really studying it and going into that. But in 1978, I was running a power management equipment company and running a spa. And then I had my own spa, and I had done all this research on the effects of pyramids, the geometries, the precise geometries, and working with all the different ones, testing the effects of different ones. Did a lot of research with that, and also studying Ott's work, Dr. John Ott, on light.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great material. So I got special lights. I got material from NASA. I had built this whole thing with power management equipment, and I built my first scalar healing light chamber in 1978 in my spa. So, yeah, very, very effective. But it was one person at a time, and the total reversals of leukemia and lupus and different cancers, but produced the vitamin D. I mean, it was probably the world's first tanning booth.
Wow. Huh?
Because you get a good tan in it too, but it's because I was intentionally working with the light to produce the vitamin D and to balance the hormones and all that, and then with all the geometries and all that. So that's my first scalar healing light chamber that I developed, and then, teaching the holistic health thing every which way. And it wasn't until the early 90s that I actually put this technology together. But I'm a strong believer in ask and you shall receive. If you want to call it belief, I think it's a law. It is a spiritual principle. Ask and you shall receive. And the clearer the questions, the clearer the answers. And
for sure.
That be still and know in the Bible, right? Was shut up and listen. The question is the affirmation that the answer is available. So in the early 90s, I'm going, okay, God.
I like that. The question is the affirmation that the answer is available.
Yes, absolutely. Or you wouldn't have the question. It's available.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, this is logic. Applied. But anyway, so I'm meditating and I'm going, okay, God, there's only, I was considered the top healer on the planet. And people pay $1,000 to see me, waiting lists of people all over the world, people flying from everywhere, flying me everywhere, and teaching too, teaching others. And I'm going, okay, God, I'm meditating as during a Scorpio eclipse, by the way.
Okay.
Eclipses. I've meditated during eclipses since 1971 or so.
Yeah.
And anyway, the importance of that, because there's an opening that occurs, but also in the Vedic traditions that, that's when the dark is the strongest because it's eclipsing the light.
Uh-huh.
And so that's when a lot of the nefarious things have been done by the brilliant dark side, the dark light, whatever. But that's when you hold the light the strongest then. But also there's an opening where you can, it's meditating during that. And I'm going, okay, God, there's only so many people I can personally teach, touch, train. How do we heal the world? How do we create the next quantum leap of consciousness on this planet? How, we want to create a cataclysm of consciousness versus the planet having to cataclysm itself again, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
And so I'm asking these questions, clear your questions, clear the answers. So I'm asking, and when you ask really good questions, you get really good. I got a really, really good, long answer. And I think you know what that means.
Uh-huh.
It was like, and a whole conversation, yada, 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 yada. Going, you want me to do what? Program computers to emulate my work, because it's all about spiraling into the double helix of the DNA to release anything that's not of core essence. The core of the DNA is the light. It's the light from the stars. Prime function of DNA is storage of photons, right? And it's our God code. We are.
It's interesting, just looking at the EE device behind you, it looks like it's just moving very rapidly through what looks like a DNA strand to me.
It is specifically, and this was part of that download, because we wanted to create it to interface with the DNA and to activate the 12 strands, 24 strands ultimately. But this is specifically, I was told, how to activate the 12 strands, which is what my work was all about, what I was already doing, in the hands-on consciousness, with the way I worked with the body, with billions of bits of light codes and interfacing, already working directly with all the DNA and the body, like I said, dealing with the body as consciousness. I was very famous for that work, actually, as a kahuna. I've been recognized as a kahuna for more than 38 years now, which is pretty kind of interesting. But but anyway, this was early 90s. I'm getting this whole instruction of what to do, of that we have to create the counterpoint to HARP, the counterpoint to all the abuse of Tesla's work, the counterpoint to all the scalar weaponry. We have to create the counterpoint to override all of it with the higher power, the power of love. And
well, that is the answer, especially for getting the higher order DNA. We have to move beyond judgment and go into love.
Again, judge not.
Yes.
Unconditional love means letting go of every freaking excuse you've ever had, for not being in love, loving yourself and everybody else and being in love more and more all the time now.
Yep.
In the eternal now. So that's a lot of my teachings was about that. In that application, so the program, the technology, because, of course, scalar is a carrier wave and it's dense, intentional, informational fields. And then we're doing the light, like I said, interface with the DNA was many years later when I saw the screens from the Genome Project, if we stop this, I originally created it on black background. When you stop this on a black background, it looks precisely like what came out of the Genome Project. It came out briefly and then they covered it up again, but it looked precisely like this technology. And I had already created this to interface with the DNA. So there's a lot of things that went into it. Fibonacci sequences or a golden mean, very, very important to put into the technology, because I was told very intentionally, because we needed that to be able to activate and mobilize the body's stem cells. It was put in for the cellular replication patterns, because everything is that patterning in the body. So it incorporates that. There's so many things layered into it. And then the precision of the geometry with the alignment, because we're creating those phase conjugate wave pairs, right?
Yep.
Generating. But I was told to create, to generate fields of consciousness, generate fields of consciousness. And it creates like earth acupuncture, with that standing column or wave. We're working with feeding the grids within the planet and around the planet, with these fields of consciousness, generating fields of consciousness to override all the abuse, like I said, again, with the higher power, the power of love. So there are key codes to the technology. It's all about alignment with true, best, and highest. However, it's in alignment with true, best, and highest potential, taking things to the highest potential, the exponential. So one of the original names for this was HHFE technology.
HH what? FE?
HHFE, hydrogen helix fusion to the exponential.
Okay, that's definitely a more scientific name.
That wasn't something most people could relate to.
Yeah.
but you understand it, hydrogen helix fusion.
Yeah, I do. I get it. I totally get it.
Exponential, right? Take everything to the highest power. Yeah, that exponential. The shorter version was holistic, healthy fields of energy.
Holistic, healthy fields of energy.
Yeah.
There you go.
But so anyway, the first whole system then ended up being set up in Golden, Colorado in 1996 with the precise geometries and everything. Because this was a whole process of layering everything into it to get it to have the effects. And it has accomplished everything they showed and gave me. It's a long, long list of what it would be doing. But we're colliding photons like CERN or Fermi Labs, but literally creating photonic fusion.
So this is interesting. So one of the things I've spent a lot of my career analyzing is DNA. And I found a binary code inside of DNA by looking at nature's counting system. So I basically said, okay, what's nature's counting system? And I determined that for the stable elements, it's going to be just the number of protons, which is equal to the number of electrons, equal to the number of neutrons. And so the elements that go into the DNA, for adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, phosphorus, right? These elements go into making these nature's counting systems. And so if you counted up the number of hydrogen atoms, and each hydrogen would be one because it's one proton, and then you've got the number of oxygen, atoms that are in this complex molecule, and the number of carbon and the number of nitrogen, then what happens just off of those four elements is you end up with a digital root analysis, which becomes a Mod 9 numbering system. And the numbers came out to something very unique. So adenine ended up equaling 6 when you add up all the protons of adenine. And the number for thymine was 2. And the number so they add together to 8. And the number for guanine was 5, and cytosine was 3. We reduced down to one digit because we find these patterns in number theory all the time related to Mod 9 analysis, because it's a natural way that the universe organizes. Even when they use a Mod 24 spiral, there's a Mod 9 within the Mod 24. and they both work together. So you could think of it as base 10 working together with base 12. Well, what was interesting about it was that when you add the phosphorus and the phosphate backbone to it, then you had all ones. So 9 operates like 0. And anything you add to 9 will always add to the same number that you added to 9. So 9 plus 3 equals 12, but 1 plus 2 is back to 3.
Right.
So it acts like a 0.
Right.
And so what I found was that all DNA in its non-transfer RNA form comes out and gets like cut off right at 9s. It's all 9s. With the exception of when uracil replaces thymine in transfer RNA. And it creates an offset that then turns it into a 1. So you literally have 1s and 9s or 1s and 0s is another way to look at it. So it becomes an error-correcting binary code at its base when you just use that very simplistic analysis. And what was, really interesting about it is that we were even able to map what combinations of 1s and 0s would then lead to the particular codon pairs that would then lead to the next level, which was amino acid creation and protein synthesis. And so this was like really fascinating stuff. Well, it's also the subject of my last, my second season of my television show on Gaia, which is called Code X. And what we show here, and I think this is going to be where it's related to what you're doing, is this. So DNA is a dodecahedral stacking array.
Right.
Of dodecahedra that stack on top of each other. Do you agree with this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And you could see how a double strand helix forms off of the protrusions of the stellations of the dodecahedra.
Right.
But what's kind of more interesting than this is that actually a dodecahedron has an icosahedron as its dual solid pair. The icosahedron is this representation of water clusters. And don't ask me how Plato figured out that water clusters were going to be the exact shape of an icosahedron back in the 3rd, and 4th century BC.
Uh-huh.
Pretty impressive, right? Quite impressive. So you could say that because they're inherent to each other, just as an octahedron is inherent to the cube that would surround it, the dodecahedron and the icosahedron have the same relationship. And so what it looks like is this. You cannot have a dodecahedron without having a scalar form of the icosahedron also be attached to it, just as I showed you with the galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always the polygonal representation and the inscribed polygons within polygons that make it a logarithmic spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always there. The same is true with the dodecahedron and its stacking array and the icosahedron. Now, as soon as we have the icosahedron there, what happens? It actually creates up to a 12-strand DNA relationship matrix. But then when you look at it going both directions, because time goes both forward and backward at the same time, and the spiral rotation goes both directions, then you end up with 24-strand DNA.
DNA also expanded to 24 positions, or what we call strands within DNA. And we find that all of this is actually just inherent to the stacking of dodecahedra that create the DNA structure in the first place. When we realize that the dodecahedron does not exist without its icosahedron pairing, which is what's called a dual solid complement, you simply connect the center points of each of the sides of a dodecahedron, and you'll have an icosahedron, which represents water clusters. When we look at the protruding stellations on this icosahedral stacking array, we'll find that when you go both directions with that weave, or what we call the strands of DNA, connecting each of those stellations, going both directions, you end up with 24 strands DNA. 24 is a number that shows up over and over and over again, and it relates back to prime numbers.
Yeah, people keep asking me all the time, why 24 units? Well, it's because of that effect of the the geometry of the DNA, and that being so important in this time that we're in. They said I had to create something to put everybody's DNA back to the original divine matrix. It is all geometry. This is all the stuff. I love your work. I find that, I call it science is sexy.
So I thought you might like that. And it's funny because Jason reached out to me about a year or so ago when you guys were going, I think it was before he was going to go to Burning Man and get stuck in the mud for a while. And he asked me if there was any art that I would like to contribute to this effort. And so I gave him one of my drawings that then they made into this metal siding that they put on some of like collector's editions versions of your EESystems.
Oh.
And it happened that the one that they chose was the one I was hoping they would choose, because I gave them a few to choose from. And it was a Mod 24 spiral.
That's my son's work.
And so he saw it. He was like, whoa, this is cool. And he took my drawing and turned it into this, really cool kind of thing that was like decoration on the side of your EESystem.
Yeah, they're on the sides of these units actually here.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And that was my small little contribution. But the 24ness that you guys built this whole system around, that's when I first heard that, is when I started thinking, okay, there's a there, because 24 is the ultimate scalar configuration.
Right.
And it's the relationship of prime numbers, and it relates to mod 24 of prime numbers. And so I actually published a paper again at Cornell on this exact topic.
Speaking
that I'll show you that is related exactly to this.
Did you ever meet Primal from Fernando there?
I never met him, but definitely I know of the work and I've read it.
So you know Primal.
Yep. I don't know him personally, but I know of him.
He works very closely with us.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah. In fact, he's here on property right now.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
So
he's asked me to teach because, he talks about how nobody knows the things I know about Scalar and wants me to teach for Cornell.
Well, here you go. This is exactly related to your work. So I thought you might be interested, because this is a paper that I published right back in 2018, and it was called The Accurate and Infinite Prime Prediction from Novel Quasi-Prime Analytical Methodology. And what it is basically shows why 24ness is so critical to Scalar, and it's actually just forming the flower of life. The flower of life in its proper form has 24 circles in its perimeter.
Right. Yeah.
And
old geometry here.
Yep. And so this is the prime number wheel, where, first of all, if you take every prime number above 5, so 5 and above, and you take it, square it, it will be a multiple of 24 plus 1 without exception. So 5 times 5 is 25. That's 1 times 24 plus 1. 7 times 7 is 49. That's 2 times 24 plus 1. 11 times 11 is the next prime number. That's 121. That's 5 times 24 plus 1. 13 times 13 equals 169. That's 7 times 24 plus 1. 17 times 17 is 289. That's 12 times 24 plus 1. Right? So you keep going all the way around. All the yellow numbers here are the prime squared, and there's a relationship directly oriented to the multiple of 24, and I published this paper first. And then all the numbers that are red are prime. And all the numbers that are green, I found were all a new class of numbers that I classified as quasi-prime. That means they have certain prime properties. They're divisible only by prime numbers greater than 5. And so and other quasi-prime numbers as well. So what that does is it carves out all the numbers divisible by 2 and 3, and they're in the black sections here. And it makes this Templar cross. And in the center of this is where light and music emit from. And each of these, when you divide them by 360 degrees of a circle, whatever this number is, give you all of the numbers that relate to the mathematical constants. So as ratios. And also I call them time numbers. So prime numbers are numbers that have no compositivity. They're not divisible by anything else. But time numbers are numbers that have the highest degree of compositivity. They're like the anti-primes. And these are the numbers we use in the base 60 math system. So I think what you guys have done is you've harnessed this notion of 24ness and the maximum relationship to gravity and radiation, because that's what this is. These numbers, so you take the digital root or the mod 9 of each of these numbers, it will give you centripetal force of gravity and the centrifugal force of radiation. And radiation turns out to be, through the numbers, 2, 5, and 8. And gravity turns out to be 1, 4, and 7 and its permutations. So I was working with Nassim Haramein, one of our mutual friends.
Yeah.
He asked me to find a pattern for gravity and electromagnetism, and I found it in number theory, and it was this paper.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hook you up with Dr. Christian on Burma too, so you can speak with him directly. I think you'd really both enjoy that.
Did you know that there's a new love affair with mathematics and geometry happening all around the world today? People who once despised these subjects in high school are now finding they're falling in love with them. Do you know why? Because math without meaning is simply information, whereas math with meaning is divine communication. My courses, The Etymology of Number and The Language of Light, guide you on a journey of self-discovery, sharpening your problem solving and pattern perceiving, as well as analytical and creative thinking, and unlocking your fullest polymathic potential. And most importantly, acquainting you with the mathematical language of the universe itself. You will never see the U inverse the same again. To get started, I recommend The Etymology of Number, a 4-part series that explores the evolution of numbers and their impact on fields like physics, chemistry, music, and art. It is the embodiment of Leonardo da Vinci's encouragement to study the science of art and the art of science. Learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else. My second course series, The Language of Light, is a 6-part series that builds on concepts from the first course and offers deeper insights into unified sciences, ancient wisdom, spirituality, and their relevance to today. My courses are always fun and easy to understand. They intertwine mathematics, music, art, and consciousness, and illuminate the mathematical connections that span all disciplines of science and art. Register for these 2 courses, Etymology of Number and The Language of Light, at robertedwardgrant.com under the Courses tab. And join the Robert Edward Grant community chat on Orion Messenger for lively, engaging, and innovative discourse.
But this was the kind of stuff that I did. I wish I should have known you when I was in high school, because I was so deep in all that and really working with the math. And then I went so deep into the physics, but the healing. For me, it's all been about healing. And so it's an interesting.
The number 24 is divine. So the structure of this as well is actually this. So that wheel that I just showed you with mod 24 is actually a octahedron, because this has 24 edges. If I flattened it out, it would be that number spiral. And it would take the form in the 3-dimensional form as a torus.
Yeah. And so, and that's that torus. But it's also, like I said, again, to me, I was told to create this and what to do, how to layer it in to be able to, like I said, bring the DNA back to its original divine design, its original divine matrix. So you see the interface. But yeah, I had that.
I've had a similar experience, actually. I was given something that I call precise temperament tuning, which is to change the temperament of music, the space between notes, into the divine form of it, and it's called precise temperament tuning. And I was also told by Arcturians, in that case, that those particular frequencies that are all the way accurate to 10 to the negative 12th power of 1 hertz. So super precise frequencies to change music into these frequencies, and it would have a huge impact on activation of DNA at 24 strand.
And that's another piece that all needs brought forward. That's why we're coming together now,
Yeah.
Unified fields means community. We have to be the greater community. It was all divide and conquer, all separation, all divide and conquer. But this is all about, we really need to all come together, put our heads together and create the world we want. New heaven and new earth. It's through us. It's our, we
So
have
your device, I could not agree with you more. It's definitely, all the pieces to the puzzle are here now.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to be assembled.
Yeah.
That's what I keep getting over and over again. But if I look at your devices there, are they cohering? They're basically setting like a sympathetic resonance of the activation of the frequency that relates to the activation of 24-strand DNA.
Right. Yeah, that is part of what it's actually doing. Yes. And, the original research with NASA, I don't know if I told you, when we set up the first full system, NASA showed up at the door and all that stuff because it was a signature of a nuclear sub that had exploded on land. That's because of the cold nuclear fusion type aspect, which interfaces with what actually occurs. I worked with Panos Pappas. Did you ever hear of him? Panos Pappas, another mathematician, Greek, but he proved what actually occurs in the cells is cold fusion. So this, recreates or supports that natural process in the body of the cold fusion as well. But anyway, so when the first full system was fully turned on and set up, NASA showed up because it was a signature of that nuclear sub on land. And we were surrounded by 300 men in hazmat suits or something like that. But put the entire planet on high DEFCON alert for our military.
Mm-hmm.
So Pramal introduced me one time, and he goes, and she's the only person I know of. Yeah, she knows things about Scalar nobody else knows. He's introducing me, right? And she's the only person we know of who's ever single-handedly put the entire military on high DEFCON alert. It's like, oh no, did he have to introduce me that way? Because Pramal was the one who sent everybody. So we're working with him on advanced water remediation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And with one of the chief engineers out of NASA, RG, maybe you've heard of him. But yeah, taking water down to the very atoms and incorporating our technology into all that too, because you want the water to be, so it makes it work better for one thing, but also the water will carry all the information and intelligence as well.
Well, that's the thing I was getting on the 24-strand DNA, that with 24-strand DNA, the key aspect of it is the holy water, the superstructure of the icosahedron. And when it's cohered at that level, then the lumen down the center, the empty space that's made between the formation of the icosahedron, both of them, at the center becomes the same exact shape as the Dürer solid in Albrecht Dürer's Melancholia, famous etch from the 16th century. And that particular shape is like the diamond pentagon shape. It's a geometric solid that has diamond pentagonal sides and then two triangular sides that are equilateral. And once that happens, then you have a 108-degree dihedral angle exactly for the water in that lumen, and it becomes illuminated. When it's at exactly 108 degrees, then it becomes illuminated. And so you end up with, what I've been referring to as the Homo Sanctus Luminous.
Yeah.
Homo erectus, right? Homo sapien.
So Sanctus Luminous. I love that. That is exactly what we want.
Yeah. The sacred light of humanity, right?
Yeah. I mean, this was designed to remind everybody who we really are, because it's all coded in our DNA, and all the seeding of the DNA on this planet, how you bring all of that to its highest potential now for this time. This is the turning of the ages. It's the 26,000 year cycles and precession of the equinoxes. Everything is foretold for this time. But how do we bring people into that higher state of total remembrance of who we are, all that we are, all that we're here for, all that we have access to, how highly we're connected, and really remembering, that's that old Isis and Back to the Egypt
Yeah.
thing.
Back to
Remembering.
the Egypt thing. Exactly. And this is what, if your device delivered on this, right? This idea, the combination of this holy water and the activation at the 108-degree angle, the dihedral, then this is what it should do. Let me show this real quick.
Yeah. This is cool. Yeah.
So I'll just start this over real quick. There we go.
Yeah, of course, this is a science, and this is how our brains think and how we relate to everything. But trying to explain that to people is difficult, But for our technology, I wanted it to be a total no-brainer. You take a nap,
Yep.
You say your prayers, set your intentions. The actual research, you can go to a deeper meditational state than a Tibetan monk in 7 minutes. And that was John Orva, who was the head of science for the Pentagon, right? Did you ever meet him? Yeah.
No, I didn't. I try to keep away from the people of the Pentagon.
He was phenomenal. He was brought to meet me, sent to meet me, came in with the $100,000 oscilloscope and explaining what he's seeing and what it means. But he was a top brain researcher. So we really had fun doing brain research. Because, in our technology, he's explaining, it's total nullification of all detrimental fields, transmutation into beneficial. You've got all this, the original research with NASA, after NASA showed up the door, we ended up putting a small system in Houston. And that's what they found is the top geneticists found it was repairing all the genetic damage and lengthening the telomeres. This is back in the late 90s. Couldn't talk about that with anybody either. But I would go to Houston and I get all the debriefing of everything they were studying with our technology and all that. But part of that is from that fusion aspect, where it's the geometry of exactly what you're showing. That's the underlying, the underlying science part of it. But it all relates. It's all relative.
It's very beautiful too. And I think from a more mainstream science perspective, they can understand that there are fundamentally, it's not that the DNA strands are not already there. They're just not activated. It's like software that's grayed out and you can't activate it.
Well, God didn't make junk though.
They didn't make junk, right? So, but they're there. They have to be there because those protrusions exist because the dual solid must exist for the same geometric form. It must. It's like fundamental. And then within that, the entire, down the center of the lumen, you have all geometric forms of Platonic solids and the Archimedeans and the Catalans that form inside that structure. So we literally become like a crystallized body, right? And this is what the downloads I've had, from the field, from the Akashic. And when I first started hearing about, and I thought it was just kind of beyond a coincidence that you guys had gone down the exact path of Mod 24, and that was a fundamental aspect to what you had built. And so I was like, okay, then this is something I definitely want to understand better, because I think it definitely, at least it's built on the right geometric principles.
Well, and then in Hawaiian, we have a term pono. Pono means balance. You could see it as 0 point. Dynamic homeostasis, you could see it as all those things. Pono, everything wants to be in balance. It's also what I call righteousness, making what's right more right. That's what ho'oponopono means, right? Making what's right more right. Righteousness, right use.
I remember, it's like one of those words. I would go to order the fish there. It was like humu humu nuku apua, right? Pono, pono, pono. It's like, okay.
But the definition of pono that I really like is effectiveness is the measure of truth.
So it's like efficacy is the measure of truth.
Yeah, because my whole thing, how effective, how efficient, how does it work? We just want things to really, really, really work, right? We could go back to the astrology, the Virgo with Capricorn moon, 29.5 degrees Scorpio rising. Venus, Pluto, Mars conjunct in my 9th house, teaching that alchemical sacred marriage, that divine union. Yeah, so I have 30 some years of right left brain synchronization research, a lot of brain research. So that's been a lot of my stuff. But, we're here, that astrology is good for showing the divine design of our map of intention, is what I like to call it.
Well, the music, that's the other thing.
But that Virgo, Capricorn, Scorpio, we're deep researchers, really deep.
Oh yeah, my south node was Virgo. My south node was Virgo, which is probably how I ended up as a pharma CEO. And now, I've left it all behind because, I go into my north node, and my north node is Pisces. Yeah. Which is to be a wisdom teacher. It couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah. Well, to be the Christ consciousness on the planet, that's a different deal. A little different. Although Virgo has its gifts.
Well, Virgo has to give birth to it. Isn't that interesting? If Virgo gives birth, right? It's like the virgin birth to the Christ consciousness.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And it's in Pisces. That's interesting.
And the big learning of Virgo is judge not, the big learning.
Well,
because the more that you criticize or are critical, the more there is to be critical of. And
no, absolutely.
Yeah, so, do you want the ultimate Virgo affirmation?
What's that?
Ultimate Virgo trip. The more you focus on the perfection of everything, the more you focus on the perfection, the more the perfection manifests more perfectly.
Yep, that's true. It's funny. Today, I just posted this. All things you're being an activist for, when you think you're helping, actually you're not. You're only creating more of it. Love the opposite until you no longer judge it. And then it will no longer manifest.
That's exactly right. Whatever you focus on expands. Focus on what we want.
It's like what you resist will persist. Where energy goes, it's like everything flows. It's our attention. Where focus goes, energy flows. That's exactly what happens. So we just create more of it. And that's why I think this, you probably don't even know this, but the way you've configured this technology around Mod 24 is also directly in alignment with the new musical scale, which is a quarter tone, not semitone scale of Mod 24. So there's actually 24 notes in one scale.
Cool.
I found this all encrypted in the Giza Plateau. The entire thing is encrypted in Giza Plateau. There's a thing we have on it, which was called the Holy Grail of Geometry. You can find it on YouTube. I'll just try to pull it up real quick.
Holy Grail.
Okay. The Holy Grail of Geometry. I think that's what you've done. You've actually created this different approach altogether. Holy Grail of Geometry.
Yeah, but basically it's pretty simple. The power that made the body heals the body. How do you plug the body back into the cosmic light socket and give it the energy, the information, the geometry?
That does sound easy, right? It sounds easy.
And I used to say my job was, as a healer, wasn't to heal things because, what are you going to do with that? But except you understand, healing means wholeness, means holiness. It's about remembering the sacredness of our bodies, who we are, all that we're here for. But it's an interesting how you work with the different consciousness. The Holy Grail of Geometry.
Holy Grail of Geometry. And what this does is it actually splits out the entire relationship of all three pyramids on the Giza Plateau, and it lines up their notes in a Mod 24 relationship.
Yeah.
So the whole thing breaks down. It's very precise geometry, the whole thing. So if you haven't seen this, and it's all related to Metatron's cube in the Flower of Life, all of it. So it's literally musical scales. The entire thing is musical scales, and that's what we're basically dealing with. Each of the three pyramids are all the musical scale as well. They make a particular sound. Here, this is the scale relationship, but now it goes into Mod 24.
Within the ratios of the Great Pyramid, moving outward from the center of the scale.
It's the height over the base.
Image ratios every pair of semitones. The perfect fourth and fifth are inversions of each other, expressed in the simple integers 2 and 3, which turn out to be fundamental to the geometry of Khafre. The major third and minor sixth are inversions of each other, expressed in the integers 4 and 5, the fundamental structure of Menkaure. The minor third and major sixth are inversions expressed in the integers 5 and 6, which again can be found.
Abu Rawash.
But the comprehensive new system unveiled in part 4.
It'd be fun going to Egypt with you. I went 6 times. I did the original 11-11s and 12-12s and all these different timings there with large groups, and I haven't been back there in a while.
Yeah, no, it's the mod 24.
Yeah.
So like, again, it's like these things don't happen by coincidence. And you know, I had done this thing called the musical wave of time as well. And, you know, we are already going forward through procession of equinox.
Right.
At the same time that we're going backward through it as well.
Procession,
so
precession.
the forward procession is 1 degree equals 1 day. And the reason why 360 degrees is the right number is because the lunar calendar has an annual cycle of 354.6 days. And so 354.6 days plus the solar cycle, including leap years, of 365.4 days. The two add together to 720. When you have the masculine and the feminine together, then the mean value comes out exactly to 360.
Interesting.
It's just two sides of the DNA strand. That's all that it is. And we've just forgotten the feminine aspect, the moon cycle, in how we reckon our calendar. And so what, you know, when you start thinking about that, okay, then you have this mod 24 relationship and this musical wave of time that then has, on the long cycle of precession, each degree is 72 years of our time. Actually, it comes out to be 66.66666 when you account for mass time dilation and the increase of gravitational pull when we get closer to Sirius A, our sister star. So the musical wave of time is another thing that you can find on here, and I think it directly relates to your work and this 24 note tonality that basically shows.
And it's giving the body, when you give the body the DNA, etc., the information back. Every cell, every part of us wants to function perfectly. This is like just giving it all permission, that perfect environment where we're perfectly supported in the truth of who we really are, which is sons and daughters of God, divine beings, beings of light.
Absolutely. It's exactly what we are. And so when you start understanding that this is all embedded within Metatron's cube, and the 528 hertz is actually just the other polarity of the same 432 scale, and it's all part of the same 24 note scale. So we've been having people fighting over what? No, it should be 432. No, it should be 528. No, it's 432. It's actually the same scale. It's just a 24 note scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever know Walter Kaplinsky, another top secret government physicist?
I don't think so.
His wife was very into the music and all the mathematics and the music and all that. But she talked about, so I'd love you to work more with Michael too, because she would say that Michael plays the DNA, the way he works.
Yeah, like he's on a piano.
Yeah. And he just naturally does it. Of course, he grew up under a pyramid, as a baby, he was always under pyramids. And, that's how I raised my kids. But he grew up with all of this. So he's very interesting. So I think you'll have a lot of fun bringing forward all the new advances with the musical side of things, because that's very, very important too.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So I think what you've done is you've created a system that actually, I see it as a platform technology. I see it as a platform that one day you will be able to titrate it very specifically to a person's body to entrain it to basically get rid of things like, markers in their genome that have mutated.
Well, it's already doing that. That's already being
Yeah,
tested.
that's what people are reporting, right? I mean, I've read a lot of the reports of people saying that it's already doing that, and they're going for treatments, related to that. And of course, these are not claims that you're making. These are just claims that people are having as their own testimonials, right?
Right. And we've seen anything and everything heal because that's what the body wants to do. It wants to function perfectly. This is just really giving it the energy, the information, the environment so that everything can function more perfectly, more optimally. And it has the individual effects for people, even though it's not one person at a time at all, because you can't heal the world that way. But as you know, DNA, it's the antennas and it's all wireless, it's all scalar, and it's all photonics. So you had to have all the different aspects, and there's a predominance of Schumann resonance and things like that, because that's the timing pulse, that the body relates to, so the grounding, you need that as well. So there's
is your device somehow related to the 7.83 Schumann resonance?
It is and it isn't. It happens to produce a predominance of that energy, and the 14.8 rainforest energies. People ask, well, what frequency is it? Well, it's not just frequencies. It's spanning a full spectrum, because we're not meant to be just specific frequencies. That's not how the body works. But the grounding is very specific for, the timing pulse of our body, the earthing, the grounding, because we are an electrical matrix. It's everything in the body is that electrical component to it. So it's not specific frequencies that we're doing, but you're right. It can be a platform for delivering all kinds of information, because scalar is a carrier wave. But it's like you see vitamin D produced in the body without being in the sun. That's been tested. Stuff like that. So it's just giving the body what it needs to create all the proper production of of all the aminos and different components. But also we found with the hydrobifurcation, the release of the active oxygen, the active hydrogen, it's creating tremendous oxygenation, that you see the perfectly oxygenated cells in the bloodstream. You can look at the blood. And it's that active hydrogen then is what repairs the covalent hydrogen bonds in the DNA.
Are you aware of John Stuart Reed's work on oxygenation using cymatics of blood? I'm wondering if you guys are ending up doing the same thing.
Yeah, except
John,
I'm going, how do we do it, like big? But that could be done in music and carried out well, because most of what's being done with cymatics is still so small.
Yeah, it's so small.
But, and I'm going, how do we do the planet? The nullification of the radiation, that neutralization, what's called the EM null zone from the 0 point, the collapse of the detrimental field effects because of creating such coherence, goes out minimally 2.2 miles. Now, I had one of your other Gaia friends, Emery Smith, come in and argue with me. You say it does 2.2 miles. We've done the algorithms. And he gave whole another number.
Well, it's interesting though, because
he'll be there. Emery will be there. He did the analysis of the alien DNA, right, and all that stuff. Yeah. So he'll be at our event on Thursday.
I went around the world because I analyzed all the slope angles of all the pyramids. They were all different. Yeah. The slope angles were defining exactly a 24-note musical scale, and that each pyramid that has a different slope angle, they all have different slope angles, are different strings on a giant global-wide piano.
So cool.
Each pyramid is a string. So now it's starting to make me wonder, okay, did somebody else at that time think the exact same way that you're thinking right now, which is how could we do a musical scalar entrainment frequency entrainment for DNA, maybe as the age was being lost, right? Because we're going out of the Satya Yuga into a Kali Yuga. How could we extend it for as long as possible? Put all these pyramids on the ley lines to artificially maintain a higher frequency for as long as possible. And
right.
and
then
then
we're
kind of,
hijacked.
yeah,
Hijacked, like a lot of
it
things.
feels like there's something like this, because with that gigantic musical, instrument that is the world over, all the pyramids, literally everywhere, all built on these special ley lines. It seems
Yep.
like you could probably create an entrainment of scalar technology that
Yeah.
would allow the DNA to remain in a 24 strand state.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we want our planet back now,
Yeah.
But this is my
Ted
technology.
Nugent calls. He wants his shirt back, right?
We want our planet back now, please. I'm born on Constitution Day, too. Everything's on purpose, right? We the people.
That's right. Well,
back.
there's that rebel side.
We want our planet back.
That's the Aquarian. That's definitely the Aquarian energy for sure. So what else would you like to tell us about how this technology works and why it's so beneficial? I mean, you could just read, and I've read tons and tons of the reviews from people that have actually had it, that so many people swear by it.
Well, that we've seen anything and everything. We hear it all the time. It's been at University of Hawaii med schools, since 2008. Dr. Terry Shintani, the Harvard MD, JD, MPH professor of medicine, has the peer-reviewed published study, reversal of seizure disorder and autism. Things like that. But total reversals of mesothelioma. I mean, there's pancreatic cancer. There's all these things that, with people that they go and they can't find the tumors. They can't find the cancer. Of course, it also, people need to, it's about giving them the energy to make healthier, more intelligent, more informed choices too. You can't expect to be super healthy if you're still poisoning yourself. That should be obvious. Quit paying the bastards to poison you, or paying for poisons. I mean, it's like, so we want people to wake up and make healthier choices. That is part of it, rather than keep buying into the same programming and marketing. But this technology is designed to work with all those pyramids.
Really? See, we hadn't even talked about this, and now I'm like really interested.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of my memories of my job to set those up. Okay. Anyway, lots of memories. So we're just here on a mission. We're sent on a mission. We're just trying to get her done. But initially,
Trying to get her done. I like that.
Mission oriented, like the Marines or something. We do a lot with the military, which has been great. But yeah, they initially said it had to be primarily in private homes, so it couldn't be stopped, because each system that goes in expands the fields exponentially. It's a field technology, right? And working with the grids within the planet, around the planet, very Arcturian work, very Metatronic work.
Aha.
Look at it from that side.
Yes, I'm connected on both of those frames for sure.
Very strongly connected with all of that. And, and the Christ consciousness. I have all those, memories from that time as well, which a lot of us do, really, because this is the time of that fulfillment of all that prophecy.
I just did you probably knew Dolores Cannon.
I didn't know her well, but yes, she did great work.
I just did my first QHHT hypnosis session, past life regression.
I saw it with Sarah. I love Sarah.
With Sarah, Breastman Cosmic.
That I was told to write. I was so
no
happy.
Kidding.
I was so
she
happy.
She did a good job. Her books are outstanding.
I was so happy, because I was the first person to ever do past life regression live on network television. It's 38 years ago. and had boxes of transcripts of that material. And then I went to Hawaii, and on the, Puna side, had put my kids in Waldorf school,
Well, I think Waldorf schools are pretty good. I really like the ideas behind it.
Records. Oh, yeah.
I'm a fan of Rudolf Steiner's work for sure.
Absolutely fan of Rudolf Steiner. So I moved to Hawaii when my youngest daughter, I don't know if you met her, but Mela, when she was an infant, moved there to have my kids in Waldorf, because that's, we need independent thinking, and it's all about right, left brain synchronization, all about that. Just brilliant, brilliant work. But all those boxes of the transcripts and all my handwritten transcripts from Atlantis and all the different things, basically mildewed and molded with because it would rain for a week solid there in the middle of a rainforest. But that's also where I developed this technology from, and that's also why there's something of a predominance of rainforest energies. There's a program in there too that's the dolphin and whale frequencies, the keepers of the DNA, the whales, that kind of. So it's all, there's so many things embedded into it that works together.
What a beautiful, it's so amazing to think about. It's like, wow.
So initially,
so complex, but yet so simple.
Yeah, it's both. And welcome to the way our brains work, right? But that genius and insanity, it's a scalar wave,
Yeah. It's funny though, you think about how many lines have to be drawn just to get the beauty of one curve perfect.
Yeah.
Right. I think it says something about complexity versus simplicity. And we see the curve, that's this beautiful curve. You're like, wow, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. But all the complexity that goes into making that is like mind-boggling.
Elegance, where there's no superfluous anything.
Yes.
Very elegant, but like this, we had to create something that was a no-brainer. You put the pets in, the dogs in, the people in, they don't have to think about it. It just works, right? But initially it's like had to be all over the world in private homes, so it couldn't be stopped. And doing the homework, doing the research, initial clinicals were 2001. You talk about going through stuff. I was a healer for a lot of the satanic ritual abuse stuff, Kathy O'Brien, and that whole, all of that was a lot of the healing work I did. This technology came out of all that work too. So when I was using it with that in the early 90s and stuff, anyway, I got on Kissinger's radar, and everything was taken in 2002. Took everything. Started over from less than scratch. All kinds of attempts.
I heard about this. Michael told me about this.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, and just literally had to start over from scratch. Even though the initial clinicals were 2001 to 2002 with the John Hopkins trained oncologists. Part of the problem was couldn't shut him up, or it was becoming way too popular. So that was. So it's part of, so what you go through with building things, but we're on a mission, so we're just going to keep doing it. Another time, there were all kinds of attempts in my life because I refused to sell. This was 2004 or so. I refused to sell to GE or DARPA. And the agent already had his commission worked out. And so, that was another. Then all of a sudden, I owed him this giant amount of money because of what he was going to sell for, so we've been through some crazy stuff, but just want to heal the world. That was always do the homework, lay the foundations, because when it goes out, it has to be everywhere fast. So it can't be stopped. We have about 600 centers now, besides all the thousands in private homes. So that's 600 centers in over 55 countries. And that was since I did that revolution of healing with TLS, the light system, which I have a history of, of working with, it's what I call special ops or special forces for divine intervention. But it goes back to Egypt and further, but the TLS, the light system. So he was sent by them. And then when that interview went out, when it was released, we had over 70,000 emails from all over the world in 24 hours. God knows how many phone calls. We had nothing to handle all of it and trying to
Whose job was it to answer 70,000 emails?
Yeah. I was like, what do you do?
That doesn't sound very fun to me. It's like, no, you do that. No, you do that.
That crashed everything, you know? It's like, I mean, how many companies could handle 70,000 emails overnight? It was more than that. It's like, the craziness. My son is a brilliant master. He'd go, oh, Mom, it's too much on my shoulders. I said, that's why you have really big shoulders.
So what else would you like to tell us about this device?
Oh, what else do you want to know? It's, it was designed for this time. How do we create a quantum leap of consciousness on a planet? I heard for decades, I heard the Great Awakening cannot and will not be stopped. But I'm going, wait a minute, how do we get from here to there? We need a quantum leap. How do we, I'm being able to do regression. There's progression. So you can, view what I call probable projected timelines. Probable projected timelines. Yep. So you can, view that. And I go, excuse me, how do we create the next quantum leap of consciousness to bypass those projected realities, even though everything's solidly in place for them? So I was made promises that if I did this, we would bypass those FEMA camps and things.
Yeah, a FEMA camp doesn't sound very fun.
No, guillotines. I said, no. Didn't we do that good enough in Nazi Germany stuff? I mean,
yeah, we don't need a reign of terror for sure. Not.
No, and it's like, no. We want our planet back. It's a new heaven, a new earth through us. I'm here for the fulfillment of all the prayers, all the promises, all the prophecies of all who have gone before us. We've waited a long time for this time on the planet. This was given as what my job was, to bring this forward for this time.
Now, how can people find this? Where do they go to learn more about it if they're interested in learning more about it?
Oh, of course, there's EESystem.com, Energy Enhancement System, EESystem.com. You can put in EESystem or my name in YouTube. Lots and lots will come up. People that want more of the science side may enjoy like the Tesla Tech talks that I've done, things like that. But where you're going to find the most information, really, about all the stuff that we can't put on our site, is unifiedhealing.com, which
unifiedhealing.com.
Brilliance. As you know, Jason is absolutely a master and absolutely brilliant. And you know that pyramid code thing that he's part of, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm in that thing with him there. Old past life memories.
Sure thing. Yeah, absolutely.
The Atlantean. I saw her books, Sarah Bressman. I'm going, oh my God, I love you. You did books.
No, they're really good.
I knew somebody would finally bring them forward, because if you don't do something, somebody else is going to do it.
I just did a podcast with her that came out yesterday.
Oh, nice.
So you may want to check it out also, just my think tank, Robert Edward Grant with Sarah Bressman Cosme. And we talked about what came through on the regression I did, which was, we decided to publish it, and it's available also to listen to on YouTube. And it's pretty epic. I think what's going on right now in this time, and I think this technology is one of many that are all playing together in a symphony. It's like a very important musical instrument. And, you don't see how it plays with the rest of the different things like precise temperament tuning and, other modalities as well, both in health and wellness, but also just to activate people, that are all different expressions of the same source, which comes down to this, 24ness thing. And makes me think of what I'm about to show you, actually, because this is,
and part of the intentionality of this technology how do we bring everything and anything and every healer and every healing modality, any and everything? We have everything to fix and cure and heal everything on this planet, right? Everything. But how do we bring it all to the highest potential, what it could be, should be doing now?
And I think a big part of that starts with each of us in changing our perception and sort of moving beyond judgment and moving to love. I think that's a big part that each one of us can play a role in. And then when we start doing that, then technologies like this start to come into our field.
Yeah. And it's a big equation, the big equation, God is love.
Yes. God is love. I think it comes back to that beautiful simplicity and this right here, the caduceus.
On a 24-note scale, we can depict this as two snakes of Hermetic wisdom. These two snakes, one starting with 432 hertz, the other connecting to 528 hertz, both creating 12-note chromatic scales that perfectly intertwine one with another to create one universal experience.
Thank you so much. It's been quite a conversation. I'm fascinated by, I have so many other kind of technical questions, like how many amps does it pull? I'm not sure that that's going to be so interesting to people. Does it have to be 380 volt, 3-phase? Can I have one of these in my house? I actually have one here. And it's a small cube technology. It's fascinating.
That's 4 units inside. Creating
4 units inside, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the baby system.
It's the baby system, right?
Like Tony Robbins sleeps in a 24-unit system. Obviously, that's ideal and optimal. It's like sleeping in heaven. But it's the baby. It has 4 units inside, and then so it's a strong, phase conjugation implosion mechanism, right? With the geometry, because phase conjugate wave pairs and the implosion.
Wave pairs, implosion force versus explosion force. It's gravitational and centripetal.
So it's creating that strong vortex, that strong torsion field.
So I want to know, what does it do when you've got a 24 system around your bed and you have sex? That sounds like a double-blind, placebo-controlled study in your future.
No, that's the double-blind studies. That's
double-blind, not double-blind. Okay.
I do the double-blind studies. That's what I'm famous for. Okay. But let's just say anything and everything, your ultimate tantric experience, but anything and everything works better. My late husband, who was
you have a whole new business model now. I think there's a whole new, a whole new business model. You heard it right here, everyone.
Well, we joke about
Dr. Sandra Rose Michael said everything works better.
We joke about that. The women drag their husband in. After that, you've got the man's attention, and he gets in there. I've had men in their 80s. The wife bought it for their home. There's units around their bed. In their 80s, they're going, "Oh my God, my only regret is not doing this sooner. It's the best investment I've ever made in my entire life."
Really?
Had somebody with prostate cancer, put it around his bed, full sexual function.
Wow, that would definitely be well worth it.
Might be medical.
Imagine.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're kind of famous for.
Really? See, I thought I just stumbled upon that question. Obviously, no, you're like, no, we've actually got studies on this. We've tested, upregulation of repair enzymes and testosterone levels, and I'm sure you probably have. My
late husband, who was there with me when we put together the whole full system, he had been head of technology for Lockheed Martin, so he's just another super nerd, right? And every kind of toxic exposure, from being in Vietnam with Agent Orange and running GE nuclear plants and things like that. Every kind of toxic exposure. But after sleeping in the system, he in his 60s, his testosterone was that of a 20-year-old. All of his hormones were perfect. No heavy metals whatsoever. Of course, he did go through what I called strange, weird shift, as far as there'd be globs of fluorescent green or fluorescent orange in the toilet sometimes, or another time he had worked in a hydraulics factory at one point. And one time I went in, he's laying in the middle of the system, and the whole room smelled of like a hydraulics factory. I went and touched him and threw up. The body was all of a sudden dumping all that. But people do ask, what are the side effects? Well, now I'm here to heal the world. I have more than 5 million air miles, I'm all over the world. I've lectured at more than 20 medical schools or ministries of health around the world, all that, been all over the world. And I'm here to heal the world, so I'm all over it. And he's going, can't you just be a stay-at-home wife? Can't you just do a local practice like other doctors? Because he's got the testosterone of a 20-year-old in his 60s.
Yeah, I'm a little scared about that, to be honest. I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know that I want to go back to my 20s. I made some really bad decisions, maybe related to my high testosterone levels.
That might be why he's not with us anymore. So there are side effects. This was one I finally said, okay, honey, I get it. It was great when I was home. I finally said, okay, you certainly didn't marry me to be celibate, So we did a ceremony to rescind our vows and bless each other to our next best highest and all that. And he ended up off with a former supermodel.
Oh gosh. Oh wow. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time with me. Thank you for all your work that you've done and being open, to being able to bring something like this through at a time when it's really, I think, it's going to play an important role in the future of the next evolution of humanity.
That's what it's for. Yeah, from mankind to humankind, the God beings. That was
the
part
Homo Sanctus Luminous. Yes, the sacred light.
That is the perfect name right there. Homo Sanctus Luminous. Yes, yeah, the beings of light, and to walk the planet as the fully realized God and God beings that we really are, sons and daughters of God, and full remembrance of who we are, all that we're here for, full access to all that's ours. Because Christ said everything he did and more we're to do. Let's get on with it.
Let's get her done. Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time with me. I look forward to meeting you in person. It's been a delightful conversation. And I definitely think that there's some big things ahead for you and for this technology, and we don't even probably know all the things that it can do yet. So
yeah.
Thank you to everybody. Until next week on Think Tank. Something isn't right. The ease of modern digital communication comes with costs. What are these colossal technology companies doing with our words,